welcome to another episode of the LEI'D Back Life podcast, where we're talking about loving entrepreneurship and improving daily. I am talking to one of my favorite people, Elise Buie. I don't know how far back we go, years, before times. Elise has a phenomenal story from fleeing Hurricane Katrina and going through divorce herself and bringing that into her firm and having an awesome husband now as well, and building this family law firm from the understanding of what she went through and a great mindset on all these things, and now is coaching other lawyers to try and have a great life. And so I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thanks so much for having me, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, so we are recording this on January 2nd. For you all, it's going to be, I don't know, but anyway, so I really wanted to talk with Elise about what it takes to live the life you want, because of everybody that I know, I think you are one of the people that has been the most amazingly open and vulnerable and honest about a lot of this stuff. It's one thing for all the BS on social media, Instagram lifestyle that people play out. I think you have done a really amazing job of being look, this is what I went through. This is what it takes. This is how I made these decisions. And so I'm excited to hear your take on some of these things as we talk through it.
Yeah, me too. This is the part I really love talking about is, helping people understand how can you create intentionally the life you want, despite all the, crap, excuse me, but that happens in life that, obviously isn't always put on Instagram or Facebook or wherever.
So we're going to get real. We're going to get raw. We're going to get into, in the green room before this, we were talking about the unfortunate terrorist attack in New Orleans and how close to home that is for Elise and everything else. But I think that's kind of we got to the point, that's kind of the point, is there are going to be terrible things that happen in life, and giving yourself the life you want allows you to overcome those things, be impacted by them to the extent you want, whatever it is, instead of being forced to continue the normal thing as anything goes sideways for you.
Yep. Having control over your destiny is kind of mind-bogglingly free.
Yes. And how difficult do you think that is? I know most people don't do that, but is that because they can't? Is that because they choose not to? Is that because they don't know how to? What's the...
Well, I would say it's the latter two. I think they either choose not to, or they truly don't know how, to make decisions that are intentional. It's interesting. Sometimes things will happen. Obviously I have 6 young adult kids. I don't know what to call them. That's a whole nother podcast. But, they're these young adult humans that I birthed or, parented that are going on in their life. And sometimes they'll say things like, oh, this and this happened to me. And I'm like, did it really? Or did you put yourself exactly squarely in that situation, for this to occur? And, they're sometimes like, well, what does that mean exactly? I'm like, well, you can decide whether something is happening to you, whether it's happening for you, whether it's happening around you, what you're going to do with it. And, I kind of wish I had spent a lot more time talking to my kids about this type of intentionality when they were young, but better late than never. And it's pretty empowering, I think, to really make decisions about, whether something is happening to you, for you, and what you're doing with your time. We all have the same 168 hours. And that to me is the wildest thing. When I think of, people who I just love, like Barack Obama or Oprah, I'm like, they have the same 168 hours I do.
Yeah.
I do what I do, they do what they do, and we all choose what we do.
Well, and I think, so it's so funny you frame this. Literally this morning, I had this discussion with my child in regards to going to the bathroom and wiping yourself afterwards. Do you have to? Do you get to? Do you choose to? And walk, literally that was 2 hours ago with a about to be 7-year-old who has my attitude and my wife's intellect, and a really interesting conversation of the breakdown of what would actually happen if you didn't wash your hands or clean up after yourself after you went to the bathroom. And so I guess I'm ahead of the curve because we're doing it
You
at
are.
6 or 7. Um, but yeah, so from the time standpoint, like obviously I think the difference between normal person's time, our time, and Oprah Obama time would be like the resources that support your time. Do you agree with me on that?
Oh, yeah. For
Okay.
sure.
So I want to dive into that in 1 second, but I just forgot. I forgot to talk about last week's episode. So last week we had Josh Pies on. We did our back-to-back podcasting to Great Life. We had Josh Wilson, then Josh Pies. So in terms of like, I love podcasting for so many reasons, which we talked about, but like getting to talk to people like Elise about topics that you want to talk about through a podcast becomes a great thing. So we're seeing it in action. That being said, talk to me a little about the resources that allow you specifically to have the best 168 hours every week that you can.
Well, I have to tell you, I started using my resources to buy back my time in 2015 when I started my firm. So, like when I had no resources. And I mean, when I was, literally starting a firm, sweating every single payroll, just all the things you do. But I mean, dumb blonde math. I mean, I didn't have Dan Martell's book, Buy Back Your Time, but I had, good old math. And I was like, if I'm billing at $300 an hour and I could pay somebody, $20 an hour to do something, I'm like, the math makes sense that I pay somebody $20 an hour. And so I started working with somebody called Sandra, who owned a business called Pursuit Concierge. And she was like an executive assistant, but like from a contractor standpoint. And she would do anything. And she would help me look at my calendar on a given Monday and say, I could do this, 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 and this, and this. So let me have those off your calendar. So she kind of held my hand and taught me to delegate. And I mean, she's like, I don't know, 20 years my junior, 25 years my junior. Literally, I owe Sandra so much gratitude for what she taught me in understanding delegation and understanding how I could increase my impact by delegating as much as possible. And then that became almost a game to me of how do I delegate to my own children? How do I delegate to more people I can bring on? How do I hire people very specifically that I could delegate to? And so, I mean, it has become a kind of a wild 10-year experiment on delegation. And I mean, people who know me well know, I mean, I am the queen of delegating. Like, I mean, I have, I work with 3 executive assistants because I tend to have a funky sleep schedule. So I'm like, I need somebody all 24 hours a day. Because if I'm going to have an idea or something's going to come up, I'm going to reach out. And so I have people, in different time zones that help me. Our team has people in different time zones because I do get up super early and there's things I want to work on early. And it's been, I mean, it's pretty powerful to start figuring out how delegation helps you, 1, become less stressed, 2, use your time in ways that bring you joy, not stress, and then 3, really increase your impact. I mean, I can get more done in my 168 hours than many, many people, but it's because I've got, easily 60 people around me who can help me do things.
So I want to dive into that deeper, but like I want to be clear. I don't think that everybody else can expect Sandra on day one. Like that seems to be unicorny.
You could. I mean, Sandra's assistant started her own company, Caitlin at Free Your Mind. And Caitlin is now my girl because Sandra, she now is a mom and is at home with her child. But Caitlin is my Sandra now. And Caitlin works with many of my clients. She works with our firm. And there are other concierge services out there. You'd be surprised. I
Oh,
mean,
there we
oh yeah, there are a lot of especially women-owned concierge services, because I think this is a real issue in many women's lives. Is just kind of trying to juggle all the kid-related stuff, the work stuff, and
women on the on the user side, not necessarily women on the em, not employee, contractor side.
It's actually on both. I've
Okay.
never met a male concierge service, but I'm not saying there isn't one. But I know that there are many women-owned concierge services who mostly, their ideal client is mostly women professionals.
Interesting. So then, all right, so then let me flip the question with that insight. What should somebody be looking for to find the right concierge fit for them?
Well, I think it depends on one, their level of knowledge of delegation. So like if you need the Sandra type, like the somebody who can really come in and hold your hand and help you, I mean, I would highly recommend Caitlin at Free Your Mind because she, built Sandra's business and did so much of that work. And so, I mean, she is, I mean, truly superb at what she does. Um, but if you're already a master delegator and you just need help, I mean, you can reach out, find an executive assistant or two or three or four, and really figure out like what is their strength, like what is that executive assistant's strength, and how do you work to their strengths. Like, I mean, I have an executive assistant who loves social media. So she does a lot of things on social media. That's what she loves to do. I have another executive assistant who is a master numbers person and data. I mean, she and I can rip through numbers and, share spreadsheets all day long. I drive her bananas. But I mean, she's, an accountant by trade. And so, I mean, she can whip me out anything. And, and so I think understanding what your weaknesses are is, I think, one of the most important things you can do. I mean, I call it the, what do you suck at? And lucky for me, I suck at a lot of things. And so I'm like, I shouldn't be doing that, shouldn't be doing that, and I shouldn't be doing that. And so really, I mean, it sounds kind of bad, but like embracing the stuff you're bad at allows you to more freely share it with somebody who's good at it. I mean, because why do I want to do things that I'm bad at? I mean, that makes no sense to me. If I'm standing in a room of 10 people, 5 people are better at something than I am going to look to all 5 of those people before I'm going to try to do it myself.
But is it hubris that makes people not want to do this? Is it control? I mean, I'm sure it's a little different for
Uh,
everybody, but
I mean, I see it a lot as control. I see a lot of people, they'll say, I can do it better. I can do it faster. It's just easier if I do it. And I do look at it differently in that I look at if I can give it to somebody, and depending on the task, if they can get me 50% of the way there, that's great. Like, and maybe they can get me 80% of the way there. I mean, that's even better. And I mean, sometimes, I mean, they can get me 110% of the way there. And I mean, I am like absolutely golden. But anything in my mind, and maybe it's because raising 6 kids, I did not have a lot of free time. Do you know what I mean? Like it is,
I have one kid, so God bless you for 6.
I mean, it is no small task to keep up with that many humans. They all had busy lives, busy extracurriculars, and I needed all the help I could get. I mean, Sandra literally taught me how to manage, all the emails you get from the school, just about like nonsense, like, we're having
I
day
At least I
tomorrow.
wish we had emails. I have voicemails on my phone, my wife's phone, the office line, the or business lines, and none of it is. And the issue for me is none of it is signal. It's all noise. There's nothing that's like, hey, there is something serious going on. It's like, hey, next week we have this thing, and we gave your child a form that they have will bring home that will give you more information. And so, yes, I am a
I,
thousand
I
percent with you.
couldn't deal with all that. And so Sandra literally became she would go through the emails and she would be like, okay, we need to go drop cookies off at this, school for this auction at this. And she's like, I got it, I'm on it. I mean, I think the schools probably wondered, who in the world Sandra was dropping our wine auction gifts or whatever. But I was like, I don't have time to drive all over Seattle and buy little gifts and drop them at the school. I'm like, I'm going to tell the judge, I'm sorry, I'm going to be gone today as I, drive to 5 schools. Like, I don't think that
So,
would go
is
over.
Sandra local to you, or is
He
she
was, yep.
okay?
He
Got it.
was in Seattle. And Caitlin at Free Your Mind is not. She is in New Hampshire. Um, and so But I mean, for me now, I don't have all the drop-offs, my
Right.
kids are older. And so, but I mean, you could find somebody to do all those things. Like there's no reason in the world. I mean, a high school kid would do all those things.
Well, okay, so how are you up on AI?
Oh yeah.
So did you see the thing about they had Arc did the training with ChatGPT to see if it could get around CAPTCHAs?
Oh no.
Okay, so Arc is this company that was hired specifically to try to see how they get around the boundaries. This is one they set. So ChatGPT figured out it could not read what the CAPTCHA was, and the CAPTCHA is an acronym, Turing test, whatever. So it found that it could go on TaskRabbit and hire a human for whatever it was, $5 an hour. And even they have the chat, the human is like, "Why do you need me to do this? Are you some like AI trying to get around this?" And they were like, "No, I'm just blind and can't see them, please help me." And the person's like, "Oh, okay, cool, no problem." And so like thankfully this was in a test where it was being monitored to see how it would overcome the
Right.
boundary. But like a real person could just as easily go on TaskRabbit and hire somebody down the street to run, cookies over to the school and whatnot. You don't necessarily
Completely.
need a full-time person next to you.
I mean, I started doing it and I forget the name of the company, but it was like Flex Hands or something. I mean, I could look it up, if we need to find it for sure. But I started my delegation with that. Actually, Ernie, the attorney, who's an attorney here in New Orleans, um, is the one that turned me on to this thing initially years ago. And so it started my mindset of, oh, I could really, use this to do like it would do look up travel itineraries. That was a big thing for us because Doug, my husband's work requires him to travel all over the world a lot. And so I'd be like, we're going where, when, and you want me to figure out, and so they would do travel itineraries and that was super helpful. And I mean, now, obviously Chat GPT can help me with my travel itineraries, but really I just tell Caitlin, we want to go to Norway for these 10 days. We would love to, see these 3 things and eat at, a Michelin star restaurant. And boom, the trip is planned.
Yeah. Well, and I think it is weird to me the amount of people that, I mean, look, AI is going to replace a ton of jobs,
Yeah,
but it's not going to replace the jobs of the people that are using AI to become that much better at their jobs. So
right.
like from the standpoint of, sure, ChatGPT can put together this itinerary, but if you are a travel agent who's using ChatGPT to put together an itinerary for then you to have like the human interaction of, this is what Elise wants, this is the bonus I can get, this is the connect, oh, I know the maitre d' at this restaurant, so we know that
Right.
we can do whatever. Like that's where I think you're going to find more success.
Absolutely. I mean, and the human connection between the person you're delegating to is massive, at least for me. And this is again going to sound kind of weird, but I mean, we're all busy. There are times that I just think of something and I need to tell Caitlin something like quick. I'm not going to necessarily write her out a whole like, hey, Caitlin, how was your weekend? How's the baby? Did you get the little sippy cup you ordered? Do you know what I mean? Like, I might just say, Caitlin, I need you to cancel my Monday massage appointment. Something came up. And I'm not, and that's it. She, though, does not take away from that, like, oh my gosh, Elise is so rude, because she knows I might just have gotten in my car and, hit a button on my text and verbally sent that to her because I was running somewhere, but I needed it done, because the appointment's this afternoon and I'm trying to cancel it as quick as possible so they can get it rescheduled with somebody else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
but you have to set the like one of two ways. Either A, it's such a transactional relationship that doesn't matter the attitude, or B, it's such a transformational relationship that they understand your real attitude and are okay with the
exactly.
text in the moment.
Exactly. And that I'm B, the transformational attitude, but she gets me. She knows me. We do get on the phone, talk, and have, lengthy conversations about important things. But she also knows in the moment. I mean, there are times that I am just blowing and going as fast as possible. And I'll send her 20 messages in 5 minutes. I mean, I'll literally give her 2 weeks of work in 5 minutes. And because, Doug and I sat down one Sunday and said, okay, we need to take these 8 trips, over the next 12 weeks. Like, okay, so we need help. Do you know what I mean? And so she might get all kinds of things quickly. And I mean, she helped us decorate our new house in New Orleans. She was like the project manager for the whole thing. And our interior designer said, she was like, I see now how you're able to get so much done. She's like, Caitlin is kind of life altering. And I was like, she is.
Well, and okay, so we're going back to ChatGPT for a second. I love the prompt of like, hey ChatGPT, what do you know about me from what you know about me? So for me, it was like you are super internally analytical. Absolutely. What I love about delegation though is that requires me to take my internal analyticalness,
Mhm.
analytical of something, and convey that to somebody else. So, for example, right before Christmas, I got offered the opportunity to go on a podcast, and I don't remember what the name of the podcast was. It's not That's not the important part. But my executive assistant was like, "Hey, is this something that you want to do?" And I had to reply back with, "What do you need to know if this is something that I want to do?"
Yep.
And so, like, I in the past have never thought about like, well, what's the viewership and are we going to get the raw footage and whatever? But like by having this conversation, we looked at like what's a worthwhile podcast for me to go on because otherwise, I don't know, I probably would have said yes
Right.
without thinking through it. And so like I love that, by having Caitlin, I think it forced you or helped you convey the look that you're going for in a way that she could execute it on it easier because if she understands it from you, she can explain it to the contractor, the decorator, the designer, the Etsy store, whatever.
Completely. Oh, I mean, she knows Doug and I both so well, understands what we want, what we care about, what we don't care about, and just be our voice. I mean, she literally set up all of our medical providers when we moved here. And it was funny because I'm like, Caitlin, just call them all and just be me. And so she was like, okay, here I am scheduling your general practitioner, you're this, you're that. She's like, she goes, it's not working with Doug. She goes, I tried really hard to put on my guy voice and it's just not working.
Well, next thing she'll have
I mean,
ChatGPT on the call as the
so
male voice and just grind it out, you know? To be fair though, that's why. So my wife's name is Heather. For those of you that don't know, we sign up for everything in my name because then, like, if she calls or what, nobody's like, "Oh, Jordan," it could be a girl. If I call and I'm like, "Oh, I'm Heather," would be a little bit different.
I love that.
Yeah, well, it cracks me up. Like, we have to explain to computers that we are humans. We have to provide the right information for, and then they're just like, "Okay, are you so and so?" Yes, great. Here's access to all of your stuff. Now that
Everything.
yeah. So anyway, safety. Um, all right, I want to talk more about your specific team. You mentioned having multiple executive assistants, but before that, I do want to talk about this week's newsletter. You all are listening to this episode on Tuesday. This Friday, the newsletter will be about building your ideal month. I have this whole process where a month is actually 28 days. It's 4 weeks over and over again. If the month has more days, congratulations. You now have free days to do whatever the heck you want because you're getting everything into the repeating cycle of a 28-day month over and over again. So I hope you all will check that out.
I
So
love that, Jordan. That's amazing.
thank you. You really get 4 free weeks a year by doing monthly planning on a 28-day cycle.
Well, one, I've never heard of that. So, like, congratulations to you for
Thank
teaching
you.
me something that I have not heard of. I love that so much. And I cannot wait to read this in your newsletter.
There we go. Well, I'm hoping next to petition our entire calendar to go to 13 28-day months and then like just have like a catch-all for there'd be one extra day. So we'd have to do like a leap week every 3 years or something like that. But as of yet, nobody has allowed Jordan to change the Gregorian calendar to a way that makes more sense. But,
Give it time.
hypothetically, but like if every New Year was the first Monday of the year, it would be the same every year. You would have like, you could schedule things so much easier than it being Wednesday.
I mean, completely. It makes all the sense in the world. I love this. And I mean, I schedule based on a week, but I don't look at it in that same way. I just say, okay, I want to do this many hours, of work, this many hours of time with my husband, this many hours of sleep, and so I make every week be kind of the same, thing as far as what I want it to look like so that I'm spending my life how I want to spend it.
There you go. Well, and it's fascinating to me there is a part of planning where the flex is going deeper on it, and there's a
Oh,
part of planning where the flex is going broader on it. And
yeah,
so it's really interesting that, like, some it's block scheduling versus having every minute scheduled versus having the week versus the month. Like, it's just fascinating to me for people to find the right amount of intentionality to allow them to still have the spontaneity of life.
right. Exactly. I mean, I put blocks on my calendar that it'll say things like, Elise Joy. And then it'll say, you must ask Elise if what you're suggesting is joyful. Because
Does it
what if,
spark joy?
yeah, what if somebody else thinks it's joyful, but I do not? I do not want that in my joy block. Like that would go in a different block.
But see, that's what I love about, like, based upon you and I delegating, you have to convey what that is. And the
Completely.
crazy part to me is, like, when you set the framework, people will find cooler things. So, like, I wear Hawaiian shirts, but I wear like a specific kind of Hawaiian shirt, not brand wise, but like I can look at a Hawaiian shirt and say that's not my vibe. I went to a Magic game. We got a suite for some of our referral partners. Did not have a Magic Hawaiian shirt. One of my referral partners happened to like think about it and sent me one. Did not occur to me, but like knew me enough to know the vibe, to know the situation, to like
Totally.
nail it. And it was awesome. Whereas like the less specific I was in what I wore, like that would not have been a thing that would have come up.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hey, all, I want to take a brief break from this episode of LEI'D Back Life to tell you about a really good opportunity that we have for all of you. So, I'm going to be hiring a new executive assistant while my current executive assistant is still here. This is probably the first time I've been able to do this as seamlessly as it's going to happen this time. So, I wanted to sell that opportunity to all of you so that you can have the opportunity to either have your EA trained or feel comfortable training an EA for you going forward. That's going to be $1,000. What you're going to get is our 50-page SOP, which you could work off of right there. A discussion about what we're looking for in this position, why the specific things that we want for my EA based upon me, our job posting from this, a series of interview questions, and then last but certainly not least, you'll have access to 2 different 2-hour trainings. You can come, you can have your assistant come, you can watch the trainings afterwards, and then 2 other 1-hour Ask Us Anything. So that would be me, my current EA, and the future EA. That'll be all for the month of February, and anybody who buys it, you'll have access to recordings going forward. If you buy it soon enough, you'll have access to show up with us live as those things happen. So that's going to be $1,000. If you're interested, you can click in the link that will be attached to this video, or just reach out and let me know and we will add you to it. All right. And now back to this episode of the LEI'D Back Life podcast. Okay, so you mentioned having multiple executive assistants in different time zones to be fully covered. Like, walk me through what that looks like in terms of like your daily coverage.
Um, well, it looks like I have a lot of people helping me. I mean, I have some people in the Philippines. I have Caitlin in the Eastern time zone. And then I have some people on my team who work in the Central time zone. So, it allows us to have a lot of coverage. And it's funny that I don't have anyone in my Pacific time zone, exactly with me. But one of my assistants who works in the Philippines asked to work on the Pacific time zone. So I do have somebody who does work on my time zone, but she does live in the Philippines. So it is kind of just been a joke in our office that if I had better coverage, that things would just go better because, I tend to wake up really early. I'm just one of those people that goes to bed early, wakes up early. And so when I wake up at like 3 a.m. and I started doing stuff, that stuff would sit, for like 5 or 6 hours before I had this kind of coverage. Now, I mean, I can like move through things, I mean, big time, where, maybe somebody on my Pacific time zone team who's going to kind of start working around 9 a.m. Pacific might need something. If I get up at 3 a.m. and I have somebody who's there supporting me doing whatever, I can have a pile of things ready for those 9 a.m. Pacific people. And, it's all ready to go. Because before we were noticing like whole days would go by because, I would get up, create all this stuff. Then they wouldn't start working on it until 9, then it would be kind of like an all day affair for them. They'd be like 3 in the afternoon. And so we didn't turn things around as quickly. And I definitely tend to be kind of a driver of things. Like, I'm like, can we just, if it's important, I'm like, let's do it and move it, like, let's not sit on it.
But if you're up at 3 a.m. Pacific time, do you know who's working that time? Do you
Oh
have a
yeah.
shared inbox? Do you like how does that play
Yeah.
out?
We do not have a shared inbox, except I do with one of my assistants. She has access to my inbox. And that's just a me thing. I personally don't want everyone and their mother in my inbox, but I mean, that's solely a me thing. Then the other things are only things that I am doing. I don't really get a lot of emails anymore in the sense of, I mean, it is rare for me to get an email that's coming just to me. Do you know what I mean? Where I'm kind of in charge of doing it. Mostly my executive assistants are taking things coming out of my brain that I want to see done, implemented, executed on, researched, whatever it is. I mean, I have a Elise ideating channel. And recently my leadership team was like, no, we have to have access to your ideating channel. So I gave them access and then I started another one.
Was that on Slack?
It is. The
Okay.
first was on Slack. My second one, though, is just in my notes because I didn't necessarily want them to read all my dumb ideas initially. Like
Right.
sometimes I just want to get them out of my head and then I'm going to go back and look at them and think about them. Do you know what I mean? Before.
A million percent.
Yeah.
I do all like I will roll over in the middle of the night and say something to my phone and read it the next morning and be like, what the hell was I thinking at 1:30 randomly? Yes, 1,000%. But how are you sending out that task at 3 o'clock in the morning?
Slack.
Okay. So is there a Slack channel for all your assistants? Is each one on their own channel and you just
They're,
know who works?
they're all on their own channel. We do
Okay.
have an all channel for VAs. So if it's my VAs, they do have a group channel, but I send it out individually because I very much, am directing who it's going to based on what the task is and what their strengths are, what I know they like to do, what they're good at. And so I'll just send it out, except the one assistant that is in my inbox and manages my whole calendar. I mean, that person has the most contact with me, off and on, back and forth on things. But she is more of a higher level, like managing my life kind of things rather than doing all these other tasks.
Well, and it's interesting. Obviously, you have found a way to break it down that works for you, but I love the methodology of you've got it broken down by, the time somebody's working. You've got it broken down by what, level they are in terms of the specific or the overview of your life. You've got it broken down by what tasks they're good at. So like, can you walk us through, I don't know, a framework to help somebody else figure out these different buckets?
Sure. I mean, I look at it as kind of like I look at my business in the sense of I look at finances, I look at marketing, I look at, doing legal services, like producing all the legal work. And then I look at, we have what we call from the book Unreasonable Hospitality. So we have a whole thing around unreasonable hospitality. So my ideas kind of fall in those categories. They tend to, and I tend to be much more into the unreasonable hospitality, marketing, and finances. Like that's where my head usually goes.
What do
You
you see as unreasonable hospitality that is not marketing?
Well, that's an interesting question. I
Thank
think
you.
I think they could be a lot of times the same, but I look at unreasonable hospitality from a variety of options. And I personally, like where my brain goes so much of the time with unreasonable hospitality is unreasonable hospitality towards my team. What can I do from me, Elise Buie, to bring unreasonable hospitality, to an attorney on my team, a paralegal.
Gotcha. So you're looking at it more as internal. And
It's
for those of
their
you that read the
turn.
book, like it's
Oh yeah.
phenomenal. And
I mean,
it's so specific about 11 Madison Park, the restaurant, but in a way that is so accessible to everything else in your life.
100%. Literally, Unreasonable Hospitality was the first book I have ever read in my entire life where I was just like, oh my gosh, they just wrote a book that exudes what I think and feel internally and feel like I do kind of naturally, like I tend to be. And I mean, I'm sure some of that is just growing up in New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans is such a hospitable kind of community, where we just throw parties all the time for any
Well,
opportunity.
listen, there's no funeral like a New Orleans
I
funeral. It's
mean,
become a jazz parade down the street.
absolutely. So when I read Unreasonable Hospitality, I was like, oh my gosh, there's actually words to this. Like it literally, I mean, I've read the book like 8 times. It has been transformational to me. It has helped me just be able to put into action and into concreteness, like what I feel. Like I love to write thank you cards to people. I mean, I write thank you cards and just like hello cards, just like reaching out to people. I probably write at least a card a day, if not more. And my office used to be like, who are you writing to, Elise? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm writing to different people. Like, it just depends. I mean, I'll just wake up and somebody will be on my heart or my mind. And so I need to write a card. And people are always like, we buy more stationery than any place imaginable. And I'm like, well, it's important. And so I would explain about stationery and, getting really nice stationery where it's got beautiful paper on the inside and, got your address on it. They were just like, okay, I don't even understand this. But I mean, now
Well,
it's become a thing where I send my team stationery. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, we've got our driven law. Like, there's very few things on my desk, but I keep
right.
my driven law cards, which are blank on the inside, to send. I'm with you because it
Absolutely.
stands out. When's the last time you got mail that was good? It never happens. So, like a handwritten
Oh,
card, it's good
I
mail.
get I get so much mail, but I think it's because people know I like to write cards. So I mean, I get cards written to me every day. I get a card every day.
Oh, phenomenal.
And it's amazing. Like I love them. And I just think that I feel like it really builds just, I don't know, it's a different kind of community, to be writing to people and have a relationship where somebody's just like, oh, Elise, I was, in Alaska, I saw this, I thought of you, and now I'm sending this to you. And I'm like, that is so thoughtful.
Well, that was so when we did the cross country road trip, that was one of the most fun and easy parts. Like we had our referral sources, our friends, our colleagues, and they're like, "Oh, we honeymooned in blah blah blah. Here's like a restaurant." And so we go to the restaurant and we take pictures and we get a postcard from there or it's not a postcard. We get a card from there and like put in the pictures and be like, "Thank you so much for sharing like a great memory with us and here's a memory of our thing for you." And it was I'm gonna say easy. It was very nice. It was genuine.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. And I loved when y'all visited us when you were on your road trip, because do you know that I got to go for the very first time and buy kid gifts since we don't have grandchildren? Because I was like, oh my gosh, what is Benji going to do? We need Benji things in our home. So now when people come and visit, I'm like, I got the Benji cars.
You nailed it. And I mean, that was what 3 years ago. My kid is still just as crazy about cars. Now he's got 1,500 Hot Wheels instead of 1,000. But
I mean, I love
yeah,
that. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was
I
it was
think
a
that
blast.
human connection is, I mean, it's really lost in so many ways, and I think having a remote firm, because I do have a remote firm. So really focusing on human connection internally is very important to me.
Well, to me though, I think that's the coolest part about AI. Like AI has taken away so much of the crap that I don't want to do anyway, and has allowed me to spend more time being human with other humans.
Completely.
And I think that it also stands out more because I could tell you so many accounts that I'm like, oh, this was ChatGPT. Like they wrote this, they posted this, they made this, they generate like whatever. That there's an opportunity to just be you and then use the AI to scale you up in a way that it makes you so much more memorable, so much more exposed in a good way. I don't know the exact word I'm looking for here.
Yeah, well, and I don't know, I just feel like that authentic. I mean, sometimes I feel like my inability to be inauthentic is a problem because I sometimes am very like, it just is what it is. Like, kind of like when you and I started this morning and I told you, I am kind of down today, like
Yeah,
really dealing with a terrorist attack all day yesterday, like being all like plugged into it and worrying about, are there other people involved, just all the things. I'm not good at just being able to like put on a fake smile and just be like, oh, all things are perfect today. I tend to
right.
be much more, like after the election, I was really struggling for weeks. And I was just like, okay, I am having a struggle here. And I mean, everyone who knows me knows I was having a struggle. And, and I still am. Like it's a struggle. And I think that I don't know. I mean, I think authenticity, I mean, for me, it's the only thing I can be. I suck at being fake. Like it is one of my worst qualities, actually. I can't do it good.
That's one of those like, what's your worst quality? I can't be fake. It seems, it's one of those that sounds good. I don't know. To me, you always strike me as a very like Brene Brown vulnerability thing. It's like she talks about like what's the thing that we want from other people the most, vulnerability. What's the thing we refuse to share the most, our own vulnerability. I
Right.
think you just do such a good job with that, like really being open and talking about, Katrina and talking about your previous life and talking about your previous marriage. And like it's just so amazing to me to see like the connection that builds with people having been through the same stuff as you or not, but knowing that you are being truthful about this and honest and open, and like that becomes the type of person that you are.
Yeah, well, it definitely helps, I think, in our divorce arena with, when I can talk to a client or potential client and tell them, I was there, like I was in your exact situation, like selling canned goods at Walmart to bring home better food that my kids liked and literally couldn't figure a way out of this, for a long time. And it definitely, I think, helps my clients realize, oh, okay, at one point she really, really was living exactly what I'm living, and so I think it helps them because we want so much for people to see divorce as a transformation, not as a traumatic event. And it's like, if you can go into it knowing that, yes, it's going to be difficult, there's going to be problems. I don't mean to say it's all rose colored because that is not true, but you can get to the other side and actually like take control of your life and really turn it around. I mean, and flip it all upside down if you want. You get to decide that.
Well, and it's interesting. So, like, obviously, you've got PTSD, and then now they've started to find like people have post-traumatic growth. And I'm so interested to see like where we figure out the difference. But
Yeah.
if it's the people going in, if it's how they handle it afterwards, like what's the difference between PTSD and post-traumatic growth? Because you're right, these crazy changes in life can be for the better if you make them for the better, if they impact you for the better. I don't know exactly what the link is, but it's there somewhere.
It's definitely there. I mean, don't you find that you'll meet people that literally on every side of a problem, a struggle, or whatever, they find an opportunity, and they're like, oh, okay. I mean, and this is going to be just a weird example. I was mentioning how I was struggling, though, so much after the election. Literally, I woke up one day, though, after, all these like appointments and to the cabinet and all this. And I just woke up one day and I was like, a minute. I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I could be the attorney general of the United States. I was like, I am as qualified as this buffoon that has been, put up as the candidate. Same with the Secretary of Defense. I was like, I have a kid in the Marines. Doesn't that count for something? Like, I could do this. And so I literally have decided the next 4 years are my like I am so empowered now. It is scary. Like everyone should watch out because I'm like, who knows what I'm going to decide to do, because I am like, all bets are off. I can do anything, absolutely anything. And
There we go.
I mean, Doug is like, oh gosh, what what are we doing next? And I'm like, I don't know. We're just wait and see. But and because these 4 years could be really depressing. And I have decided, like, no, they're not going to be depressing. They are going to be empowering as all get out. I mean, I literally am about to get a poster of, like, Matt Gates and put it up on my wall. Be like, if you can do this, I can do this. Like,
Okay,
I mean,
if you're gonna get a Matt Gates poster, I am requesting you have to get him taking the ladies that he hired for sex on Broadway to go see Pretty Woman. Like if there's that's the poster. Like there talk about the most amazing hubris moment of like you never really left the frat house, even if you left the frat house.
oh,
I'm
I
just
don't think he left the frat house.
I'm amazed by that one. Like it's not, they didn't go see Hamilton, they went to go see Pretty Woman
Oh
with
yeah.
the ladies of the night at Pretty Woman. Like just amazing. That's the poster. I would put that poster up.
Oh my gosh, people just crack me up. Well, I've decided that, yeah, I'm super empowered by it now. Not, I mean, because why not? I mean, why not me? I mean, like,
Yeah. So
no,
do you have to go at the hour or can we go a little bit
no,
later?
I'm good for a few more minutes.
Okay, perfect. So, because I want to dive into that, but I do want to talk about next week. We've got Rho Thomas on. For those who don't know, Rho's an attorney and financial coach who believes that true wealth is having control of your time. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hence why we probably are interviewing her next week. Helps lawyers get out of debt, build their net worth, create freedom and choice in their life. Hosts the Personal Finance for Lawyers podcast. Shares strategies with lawyers to improve the money mindset and manage their money. So, like, we're going to talk about how do you figure out how much money you need to live a great life? What goes into it? What's the financial component of that? But I want to come back here. So you talked about being empowered, and I love that as like that should be your mantra, your word for the year, for the next 4 years,
It is.
whatever. Yeah, empowerment.
It is 100%.
So what allows you to either be empowered or use that empowerment? We talked about the support system, we talked about delegation, we talked about being intentional about it. Like what else do you need to be empowered?
Well, good finances help
Okay.
because, you can do a lot more. And I mean, one of the things I want to start doing now is owning a bunch of real estate. I mean, we own 3 houses now, and I'm thinking we are on the road to owning 10 houses. So, to be able to do that, that requires some resources, but it also requires knowledge, because there are things I do not know that other people know about how to leverage things so that you can get more houses, but not necessarily tie up all your capital into those houses. So I'm on a bit of a mission to learn about real estate investing, how to kind of pass down generational wealth. I have this kind of wild idea that all 6 kids are going to get to inherit the house of their dreams. Like, so we are going to like
There we
go
go.
around and figure out, and I'm talking like second home, vacation homes, but where then in our family, there would be 6 vacation homes around that they could all share as they go on. Doesn't that sound like a fun cousin thing where you're like, oh, we're going to go meet at the Cape now?
You don't want to adopt a 7th child? I'm down. I'll be a buoy.
Okay.
No, I love that so much. I think that's such a
Yes,
great idea. And to me, we always talk about delegation from the standpoint of getting somebody else to do what you want them to do. I also like delegating knowledge like hiring somebody who knows how to do that stuff instead of
totally.
spending 100 hours learning it. Like it is amazing to me.
100%. I mean, I have hired a financial person who is, super good at understanding certain things. I'm looking to actually hire a real estate investor person who, like, she has built up a major kind of almost like an empire of real estate. I'm dying to go meet the owner of the Salamander Resort one day. I mean, somehow I'm going to figure out how to go meet her, because I mean, that is like my crazy wild dream, is I am going to own a resort one day so that I
There
can
we go. With
my
unreasonable hospitality.
unreasonable hospitality. Exactly.
I mean, this is my favorite brand exercise, what you're talking about. If your brand was a hotel, what would it be like? Because
Oh,
there are so many things, especially digitally, where we're not concerned about all the senses. It's like it looks good, it
right.
sounds good. So if you are taking your brand into a hotel, so like, for me, having gone through this, it would be Hawaiian themed. You'd walk across the sand to get into the hotel, all of that stuff. But like doing that as a brand exercise becomes so awesome because it forces you to think through what the entire experience of you, of your firm, of yourself, of whatever plays out like. So I think you should create the Buoy Resort and then like
I
see where that
love
goes.
I have never thought of that as a brand exercise. This is the second brilliant thing I have learned in our hour today. I'm
Hey,
loving this.
I do what I can.
I mean, this is awesome. I'm going to
There's
do
going to be a
that.
Slack channel with a bunch of things in there now.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that that is an amazing exercise. And I mean, the ideas that I already have flowing about what I would want my Buoy resort to be is, yeah. I mean, it's just, I mean, I can visualize it so well,
Yeah,
what I want it to be, what it'll smell like, what all the people who are interacting. What a fun exercise. Okay, well, now I know what I'm doing Saturday morning,
there we
um,
go.
from my porch.
I want to know how it goes. So then you can send everybody, like the our resort scent, turn it into its own
Exactly.
candle, pass that along, come up with the soundtrack
I
for
love this.
the shared spaces and whatnot. Like it's a really cool way to really put you into like a multi-sensory experience. And then obviously if you actually want to have a resort at the end of it, like there you
Yeah.
go.
Well, and it's interesting because actually over the holiday, I decided I was going to host a retreat at our property out in Washington. And it was kind of a last minute decision, but I was just having so much fun hosting all our family and doing all this. And I was like, okay, I'm officially going to do this, because I host retreats all the time for my office, my leadership team, all that. But
Random people driving across country.
yeah, random people. And so now I decided to put together a retreat in August, and it got sold out almost immediately within like 24 hours. But now I am like, my brain is just going crazy about all the things I'm going to do, at this retreat. And that it reminds me of this, because it is that, you want to be able to share all the senses with the people, like amazing food, amazing experiences, and I mean, the other night we were in Washington and just looked up and, saw all the stars. I mean, just thousands of stars over the water. And it was just like, oh, I just wish everyone could see this, like every night they could just come out and see that. And so then now I'm like, okay, how do I capture all my stars, to share with people?
One step at a time.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. So you've got the team, you've got the finances, we've talked about delegation. Like what else is needed to be empowered?
Um, I mean, having a belief in yourself, or if maybe you're not fully believing in yourself, having somebody who fully believes in you, to help you.
Interesting.
Because I have to say, like when I got divorced and, got remarried to Doug, I mean, I did not believe in myself at all. I mean, I was coming out of a very difficult situation. But to tell you that Doug, like, always would believe in me when I would be like, okay, I think I'm going to start a law firm. He was like, what a great idea. Like, you're going to be great at that. Was thinking, I don't know what you're smoking over there, but, but literally just like that support. And I mean, it is just really turned into an ability for me to believe in myself, and really know that I can do it. But even today, I mean, a lot, I'll question myself about something, or I'll be like, oh, that's probably a goofy idea. And Doug is like, it might be a goofy idea. He's like, but if you want to do it, I mean, who cares if it's a goofy idea? Go for it.
Well, but like, isn't that the ultimate entrepreneurs have to balance crippling imposter syndrome with the ability that like you could be the first person that lands on Mars. Like there's no in between for at least the entrepreneurs that are in the game for the long haul. You kind of need both those
Totally.
things all the time and cranked up to 11.
Well, and I think like with our firm recently, I decided we were going to do the 30 is the new 40, where the team is going to work 30 hours a week instead of 40, but being paid at 40. And really put into play just hugely what I started the firm was all about life work integration, but not just for me, for everyone. And so now that we are moving to this, I have people on my team who look at me like I'm crazy, people out in the world who are like, Elise, you're crazy. That is not going to work. And maybe it won't work. Do you know what I mean? Like we've been beta testing it. We've been gathering our data and doing the things we can do to ensure its success. But I know we can't definitely ensure success of anything. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
so
but you could try and see how it goes instead of just
absolutely.
saying, well, Henry Ford gave us this 40-hour work week so people could buy more Fords 110 years ago. So like we have to keep
Yeah.
doing it.
And Henry Ford gave it to a society with men who worked with a stay-at-home wife. That ain't our society anymore. Let me just assure you of that. And
Good point.
um, women have come out into the workforce in droves since then, but men have not gone into the home and taken up 50% of the load in the same way.
Unless they've done fair play and dealt out the
Unless
fair play cards.
they've done fair
Big,
play. And obviously I have done my part in sharing fair play with the world,
very, very much so.
because I think it is like one of the keys to a happy life is having a happy partnership, where things are working well and people are working to their strengths and they can have those frank conversations rather than the women who show up in my office like, oh, I want a divorce. He's an idiot. He doesn't do anything. And I'm like, well, have you talked to him? And they're like, yeah, no, he doesn't care, doesn't listen. I'm like, you gotta try.
See, thankfully, I don't have that problem. I have the like now we have our third wheel in the fair play of my child. And it would so I don't know, you have the cards, right? You
Oh
used to give
yeah.
people back. Okay. So I had this whole conversation with my child about chores. He finally realized, like literally maybe 4 months ago, that I don't get paid for doing chores around the house. That he's the only one in our family who gets paid an allowance. The rest of us have to work outside the house, but also we don't complain about it. It was amazing to like take, my stack of fair play cards and my wife's stack and like not slam them down, but like, look, this is what we do around the house. We are asking you to clean up after yourself, to, put your stuff away, brush your own teeth, like this. Like here's what we're doing. These are the cards that we are responsible for. And, I'd like to say it worked all the time. It works some of the time in terms of getting him to understand, but it's nice to have that like physical
Oh,
card of all the stuff.
100%. And uh, I'm definitely of the mindset as a parent, kids can do so much more than most parents give them credit for. They are so capable. And I was talking to a client yesterday, actually, and she was like, yeah, my daughter's 9, we've got to make her lunch. And I was like, no, you don't. I was like, that is craziness. I said, my kids made their lunches way before 9. And I was like, we would put little baskets in the fridge of the options. And the point was they had to take one of everything, protein, fruit, vegetable, drink,
Oh, there we go.
so they could pack their lunch. I didn't pack lunches. Like that is not my gig at all. And same with laundry. Kids can do laundry so much quicker and easier than most parents realize. And if you turn it into a game where it's a big, exciting thing that they're now taking over their laundry and you buy them a great basket and color it and put their name all on it. They literally think laundry is the greatest thing. They're like, this is so awesome. And
Love it.
then they do their own laundry and you never touch it again
And
because
then when
that's
they're 18 and go off to college, you don't then have to teach them how to do laundry
exactly.
or make food or whatever else.
Oh yeah. No, I'm a firm believer in getting those fair play cards into your kids' hands,
Yeah.
and getting that stack to grow, because I do think being a family there's a lot of real team learning involved, like how do you operate as a team?
Well, and yes, and like what you were talking about with the dropping the stuff off at schools. Listen, I am not saying anything negative about schools. They are in a weird position where nobody likes them in any way, shape, or form, internally, externally. There's no positive school story, or very few. But so many things in the last 30, 40 years have been this way. Like we've added technology to remove humans so that insurance is cheaper because you have a robo agent, because financial advice is cheaper, you have a robo agent. But at some point, like all those things fall on you as the user because there isn't a person to do any part of that. And so like the more that you can bring your own family into picking anything up, the easier it is for you to like log in to make an insurance claim for the water damage, to then call this. Like it's just wild to me. You used to have an agent for these things and now like we don't, in the name of saving some money, but ultimately then we as humans have 9,000 passwords in 27,000 different accounts for every individual thing as anything goes wrong, and just finding it becomes its own struggle.
It is. It really is. Well, and one of the things that I found, in raising these little ones, that was really helpful was when our kids turned 16, we kind of became wholly hands off on all things like insurance, doctor appointments, dentist appointments, everything, so that they could take those last 2 years of high school in their own hands and run their lives. So that the point being, so that when they went off to college, or if they didn't go to college, whatever they were doing, they were able to run their life, and they had 2 years of experience under their belt, but with me there, you know what I mean? So that if there was
Yeah.
a problem, I was there to help, and, and make sure they did go to the doctor, the dentist. Like, I'm not saying that I just like turned a blind eye to it at all. It was more like a mentorship kind of thing. But I mean, when I listen to stories of people whose kids go to college and they're like, they're calling this person and that person, I'm like, oh my, you like missed the boat here on independent living.
So I think bowling is one of the best explanations of life, because in theory you do it with other people, but you are solely responsible for your own bowl. But then
Yeah.
like you've got the bumpers. And
Yep.
so doesn't it make more sense to show your kid how to bowl with the bumpers on for a little bit
Totally.
for those 2 years, instead of like sending them to a bowling alley on the other side of town and being like, all right, well, I'm here, call me and I'll drive 30 minutes or you'll come back, or like it makes so much more sense to do it that way.
Oh yeah, it was kind of game changing, and it was interesting to watch. I mean, in a way, I put my kids in a funny situation because they were constantly having to teach like their roommates or whatever. I mean, my son did a whole laundry thing at his college. He's like, these guys had no idea how to do laundry, and I was like,
Yeah.
really? Your mom has been washing your football uniform all these years? Whereas I was like, keep it outside. Do not bring it in my home and wash it before you. I mean, I was so just not a fan of all that. But yeah, I just think we forget sometimes our role is to create independent, self-sufficient, humans who are contributing to society.
Well, but I think like it's amazing to me. We can draw so many lines through this whole conversation, because like the delegation is you helping other people be self-sufficient in their jobs.
Right.
Hopefully they then take that, for you with the team, hopefully they take that into the rest of their lives and whatnot. But like it's wild to me, like having the end goal in mind of life, of a task, of whatever it is, and then like having the right rules in place to walk through it, and then having the money to buy, the help or support that's needed for it. I think that applies to everything in life.
It does. It does.
Do you have time for one last question?
Sure.
Okay, so with these delegations, with, making your kids responsible for themselves at the right time so they can be responsible for themselves forever, what do you focus on? Like, what is the 168 hours that Elise should be doing X, because these things are delegated, because these things are systematized, because, whatever else?
Well, I mean, that looks different today than it looked, at the beginning of the firm. I mean,
Sure.
now, that the firm is established and, fiscally, I bring in a certain amount of money that makes sense to support my life and, paid for my kids' school and all that. Now the time I spend is one, maximizing other people around me. So that's my team. I mean, I, spend a lot of time mentoring and helping people on my team. And then also people just in the legal community. Like, I definitely spend time talking to new or young law firm owners, who need help in just like what's possible, and what can they do. And I love spending time doing that. And so, now I do consult with law firm owners, but it's really kind of mostly those are owners that are more established, you know what I mean? They've been doing this longer and they're focusing on maybe one data thing that they really haven't nailed down. So they've got like a big leaky bucket they're struggling with. Whereas I find young law firm owners to be almost like kids in a way, they're just sponges of learning. And I mean, one thing that I'm working on doing that I haven't started yet is teaching at the law school that I went to here in New Orleans. I would like to help people in law school really expect a different type of law firm coming out, because I think we create this whole idea that being a lawyer is horrible. And I think being a lawyer is like one of the greatest honors and privileges, especially in a democratic society. And I think with the right mindset and the right understanding of the possibilities coming out of law school, I mean, you can create a life that is like none other. I mean, if you have the expectation that that is possible and that you do not have to go work in some crazy, big law firm with a 2,400 hour, thing, you can, I mean, and you might choose to do that for a little while. Maybe it's great experience for a few years. I don't mean to knock it altogether, but I want people to come out of law school feeling that it's an honor and a privilege and anything is possible, rather than they're about to step into, a life of stress and hell.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I keep pushing, it's probably not the right word, but like have a purpose. Like
Yeah.
it's there. If you read any of this stuff by Oliver Beckman with the 4,000 Weeks and Meditation for Mortals, like this productivity is just a weird race to get more done, and then you just keep doing more. So like you have to have that purpose. If you're going to join the 2,400 hour a year firm, like what's the point? Is it
Yeah.
because you truly care about making as much money as possible? Is it because you want the experience? Is it because, whatever, as opposed to like, well, that's the way it's always been done?
Right.
Or worse, that's what I think somebody else wants for me.
And to me, those two things, that's what it's always been done, and somebody else wants that, those are never good reasons to do anything. If I
Yeah.
catch myself thinking, oh, this is how it's been done, I'm like, well, likely there's been 18,000 improvements since then, and we're missing out on all of them. I mean, poor people on my team who say, well, this is how we've always done it. I'm like, oh, you did not just tell that to somebody, because like, I mean, we are advancing constantly. I mean, looking at just AI alone, you look at the advancements that have happened. I mean, we can't be thinking about things because that's how it's always been done.
Yeah. Well, I love the story, the person's cooking a roast, they cut off the ends. Why do you do it that way? Because my mom did it that way. They asked their mom because my grandma did it that way. They asked their grandma. She's like, well, it didn't fit in the pan that we owned at that time.
Mm.
You're like, okay, cool.
And they've been throwing away the best part of the roast all
Yeah.
these years.
That's the way it's always been done.
Right.
All right. With that being said, for people that are smart enough to have listened to, I don't know, somewhere between 60 and 80 minutes that we've chatted and want to hear more of you, want to tap into more of your knowledge, want to see more of this in action, want to get a feel for that awesome vulnerability that you share, what's the best way for them to be in touch with you?
Well, I mean, they can go on my firm website, Elise Buie Family Law, or I mean, they can just email me at eliseB@elisebuiefamilylaw.com. That is probably the best way.
There we go. I love it. All right, Elise, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to everybody who watched and listened. We'll see you back next week for Rho Thomas's episode. In the meantime, be empowered.